Hello to those of you who might like to listen to a chapter story. I'm going to try this out and we'll see how it goes. The people who watch it can let me know if they like it or not. And the book we're going to read is called The Black Stallion. It's by Walter Farley. And let's get started. Homeward Bound, Chapter 1. The tramp steamer Drake plowed away from the coast of India and pushed its blunt prow into the Arabian Sea, homeward bound. Slowly it made its way west toward the Gulf of Aden. Its hold was loaded with coffee, rice, tea, oil seeds, and jute. Black smoke poured from its stacks, darkening the hot, cloudless sky. Alexander Ramsey, known to his friends back home in New York City as Alec, leaned over the rail and watched the water slide away from the sides of the boat. His red hair blazed redder than ever in the hot sun. His tanned elbows rested heavily on the rail as he turned his freckled face back toward the fast disappearing shore. It had been fun, those 2 months in India. He would miss Uncle Ralph, miss the days they had spent together in the jungle, even the screams of the panthers and the many eerie sounds of the jungle night. Never again would he think of a missionary's work as easy work. No, sir, you had to be big and strong, able to ride horseback for long hours through the tangled jungle paths. Alec glanced down proudly at the hard muscles in his arms. Uncle Ralph had taught him how to ride, the one thing in the world he had always wanted to do. But it was all over now. Rides back home would be few. His fist opened. Lovingly, he surveyed the pearl pocket knife he held there. The inscription on it was in gold. To Alex on his birthday, Bombay, India. He remembered, too, his uncle's words. A knife, Alec, comes in handy sometimes. Suddenly, a large hand descended on his shoulder. Well, my boy, you're on your way home, a gruff voice said, with a decidedly English accent. Alec looked up at the captain's wrinkled, wind-tanned face. Hello, Captain Watson, he answered. It's rather a long way home, though, sir. To England with you, and then New York on the Majestic. About 4 weeks sailing all in all, lad, but you could look like a pretty good sailor. I am, sir. I wasn't sick once, all the way over, and we had a rough crossing, too, Alex said proudly. Where'd you come over, lad? In June, sir, with some friends of my father's. They left me with my uncle in Bombay. You know my Uncle Ralph, don't you? He came aboard with me and spoke to you. Yes, I know your Uncle Ralph. A fine man, too. And now you're going home alone? Yes, sir. School opens next month, and I have to be there. The captain smiled and took Alec by the arm. Come along, he said. I'll show you how we steer this ship and what makes it go. The captain and the crew were kind to Alec, but the days passed monotonously for the homeward bound boy as the Drake steamed its way through the Gulf of Aden and into the Red Sea. The tropic sun beat down mercilessly on the heads of the few passengers aboard. The Drake kept near the coast of Arabia, endless miles of barren desert shore. But Alec's thoughts were not on the scorching sand. Arabia, where the greatest horses in the world were bred. Did other fellows dream of horses the way he did? To him, a horse was the greatest animal in the world. Then one day, the Drake headed for a small Arabian port. As they approached the small landing, Alec saw a crowd of Arabs milling around in great excitement. Obviously, it was not often that a boat stopped there. But as the gangplank went down with a bang, Alec could see that it wasn't the ship itself that was attracting the attention. The Arabs were crowding around the center of the landing. Alec heard a whistle, shrill, loud, clear, unlike anything he had ever heard before. He saw a mighty black horse rear on its hind legs, its forelegs striking out into the air. A white scarf was tied around its eyes. The crowd broke and ran. White lather ran down the horse's body. His mouth was open, his teeth bared. He was a giant of a horse, glistening black, too big to be pure Arabian. His mane was like a crest, mounting, then falling low. His neck was long and slender and arched to the small, savagely beautiful head. The head was that of the wildest of all wild creatures, a stallion born wild, and it was beautiful, savage, splendid. The stallion with a wonderful physical perfection that matched his savage, ruthless spirit. Once again, the black screamed and rose on his hind legs. Alec could hardly believe his eyes and ears. A stallion, a wild stallion, unbroken, such as he had read and dreamed about. 2 ropes led from the halter on the horse's head, and 4 men were attempting to pull the stallion toward the gangplank. They were going to put him on the ship. Alex saw a dark-skinned man wearing European dress and a high white turban giving directions. In his hand, he held a whip. He gave his orders tersely in Arabic. Suddenly, he walked to the rear of the horse and let the hard whip fall onto the black's hindquarters. The stallion bolted so fast that he struck one of the Arabs holding the rope. Down the man went and lay still. The black snorted and plunged. If Alex saw hate expressed by a horse, he saw it then. They had him halfway up the plank. Alec wondered where they were going to put him if they ever did succeed in getting him on the boat. Then he was on. Alec saw Captain Watson waving his arms frantically, motioning and shouting for the men to pull the stallion toward the stern. The boy followed at a safe distance. Now he saw the makeshift stall into which they were attempting to get the black. It had once been a good-sized cabin. The Drake had little accommodations for transporting animals in its hold. It was already laden with cargo. Finally, they had a horse in front of the stall. One of the men clambered on the top of the cabin, reached down and pulled the scarf away from the stallion's eyes. At the same time, the dark-skinned man again hit the horse in the hindquarters, and he bolted inside. Alec thought the stall would never be strong enough to hold him. The stallion tore into the wood and sent it flying. Thunder rolled from under his hooves. His powerful legs crashed into the sides of the cabin. His wild, shrill, high-pitched whistle filled the air. Alec felt a deep pity steal over him, for here was a wild stallion, used to the open range, imprisoned in a stall in which he was hardly able to turn. Captain Watson was conversing angrily with the dark-skinned man. The captain had probably never expected to ship a cargo such as this. Then the man pulled a thick wallet from inside his coat. He counted the bills off and handed them to the captain. Captain Watson took the bills and then looked at the stall. He took the money, shrugged his shoulders, and walked away. The dark-skinned man gathered the Arabs who had helped him bring the stallion aboard, gave them bills from his wallet, and they all departed down the gangplank. Soon the Drake was again underway. Alec gazed back at the port, watching the group gathered around the inert form of the Arab who had gone down under the black's mighty hooves. Then he turned to the stall. The dark-skinned man had gone to his cabin, and only the excited passengers were standing around outside the stall. The black horse was still fighting madly inside. The days that followed were hectic ones for Alec, passengers, and crew. He had never dreamed a horse could have such spirit, be so untamable. The ship resounded far into the night with the blows struck by those powerful legs. The outside of the stall was now covered with reinforcements. The dark-skinned man became more mysterious than ever, always alone, never talking to anyone but the captain. The Drake steamed through the Suez into the Mediterranean. That night, Alex stole out onto the deck, leaving the rest of the passengers playing cards. He listened carefully. The black was quiet. Quickly, he walked in the direction of the stall. At first, he couldn't see or hear anything. Then his eyes became accustomed to the darkness. He made out the pink-colored nostrils of the black, who was sticking his head out of the window. Alec walked quietly and slowly towards him. He put one hand in his pocket to see if the lumps of sugar he had taken from the dinner table were still there. The wind was blowing against him and carrying his scent away. He was quite close now. The black was looking out the open sea, his ears pricked forward, his thin-skinned nostrils quivering, his black mane flowing like wind-swept flame. Alec could not turn his eyes away. He could not believe such a perfect animal existed. The stallion turned and looked directly at him. His black eyes blazed. Once again, that piercing whistle filled the night air, and he disappeared into the stall. Alec took the sugar out of his pocket and left it on the windowsill. He went to his cabin. Later, when he returned, it was gone. Every night thereafter, Alec would steal up to the stall, leave the sugar, and depart. Sometimes he would see the black, and other times he would only hear the ring of hoofs against the floor. And we're going to read next. Chapter 2 is called The Storm. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry I kind of trip over words a little bit sometimes, but I will get better as I get used to reading out loud because I don't do that very often. I love you guys, and I hope you're enjoying the story.